always from the heart of the city, and now on demand 24/7 on the CHFI website. This is the soundtrack to accompany your shadow. And I'm Don Jackson, around the world on the internet. I've often done programs about shadows in the past. If you listen to the radio show for any length of time, you've probably heard a show that began in a dark shadow. This hour, I thought we might revisit some of those shadowy places. Paul Lowney, quoted in the Reader's Digest some years back, said, "No one owns his life. Everyone, no matter how insignificant, has an effect on someone else. Just as a stone sends out ripples when cast into still water, a person whose life doesn't touch another's is a person without a shadow." Me and My Shadow, this hour, with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. John Mayer and Say, and Lonestar, and I'm Already There. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. It was Henry James who wrote, "The flood of summer light had begun to ebb. The air had grown mellow. The shadows were long upon the smooth, dense turf." The shadows are indeed long on my lawn, now that we've crossed into October. Dorothea S. Greenbaum, the sculptor, on Growing Old some years back in the New York Times, said, "As I look back over 88 years of life, I can see a good side to old age. A very good side, if we accept its losses. The loss of power, the loss of looks, the loss of contemporaries, all the things that have been so precious to us. The good side is a renewed relationship with the young people. It is as if we had come full circle in our lives, making a new start. For the young, it is sometimes easier to talk to us than to the generation just behind them. There is no competition between us, and we can share whatever wisdom we have gained over the years. For ourselves, we also learn that wisdom doesn't come automatically with the years, like rings in a tree. We can gain a great deal by listening to the young, and thus, with light, cast out the shadows of old age." Dorothea S. Greenbaum, sculptor. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Bette Midler with The Wind Beneath My Wings and Martina McBride in My Daughter's Eyes. I'm Don Jackson from iTunes and CHFI.com. Richard Eyre from Utopia and Other Places, published by Bloomsbury, wrote, "Our parents cast long shadows over our lives. When we grow up, we imagine we can walk in the sun free of them. We don't realize until it's too late that we have no choice in the matter. They're always ahead of us. We carry them within us all our lives, in the shape of our face, in the way we walk, in the sound of our voice, and in our skin, our hair, our hands, our heart. We try all our lives to separate ourselves from them, and only when they are gone do we find we are indivisible." Richard Eyre from Utopia and other places, published by Bloomsbury. An interesting take on shadows. I'm Don Jackson from iTunes and CHFI.com. Loggins and Messina with Danny's song. Amy Sky and I Will Take Care of You, and Luther Vandross and Dance with My Father. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. At the start, I asked you to consider the lengthening shadows on the lawn. Outside the house, a shadow moved. An autumn wind rose and faded away. But there was something else in the silence that he heard. It was like a breath exhaled upon the window. It was like a faint drift of greenish, luminescent smoke. The motion of a single, huge October leaf blowing across the lawn and away. An excerpt from Chapter 1 of Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, published in 1951 by Simon & Schuster. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Matchbox 20, Unwell, and Van Morrison and Moondance. I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Dan Brown, in his 1998 novel Digital Fortress, published by St. Martin's Press, wrote, "In a cathedral, it is always night. The warmth of the day turns to damp coolness. The traffic is silenced behind thick granite walls. No number of candelabra can illuminate the vast darkness overhead. Shadows fall everywhere. There's only the stained glass high above, filtering the ugliness of the outside world into rays of muted reds and blues." Dan Brown from Digital Fortress. And the contemporary poet Pam Brown wrote, "To lie with you under a ceiling bright with shifting water shadows, that's good. To drowse in flower-scented darkness, that's good. But best of all is rain, drumming, roaring, gushing from the guttering. And we two, warm and dry and safe together in each other's arms." Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Heart with These Dreams and Edwin McCain and I'll Be. And I'm Don Jackson with Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Krishnamurti on Love from Think of These Things, published by Harper & Row, wrote, "To love is the most important thing in life. When you love someone because that person loves you in return, surely that is not love. To love is to have that extraordinary feeling of affection without asking anything in return. If, while you are young, you don't feel love, if you don't look with love at people, at animals, at flowers, when you grow up, you will find that your life is empty. You will be very lonely, and the dark shadows of fear will follow you always. But the moment you have in your heart this extraordinary thing called love, and feel the depth, the delight, the ecstasy of it, you will discover that for you, the world is transformed. From Think of These Things, published by Harper and Row. Out of the shadows and into the light. Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. I hope you will tell all your friends about Lovers and Other Strangers from iTunes and CHFI.com. Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.